sweaty, but otherwise fine. I thought let's start with some Italian since we saw some of that earlier today. What would you like to do other than that?
Come muore un
Yeah, we
animale?
can start with Italian. I think that is a good place to start. I learned a cool Italian word today in the class that I wanted to share with you, but
What's that?
it might have gone out of my brain. Let me check my notes.
Okay. The brain outside our skull.
Oh,
It's the notepad. Yeah.
here's one. Gonfia.
Say again?
Gonfia. Here, I'll type it in the
Yeah,
chat.
sounds good. Yeah. It's Gonfia?
Yes.
I bet you it's confidence.
Perché moriamo?
Nope. It
Okay.
means swollen.
Aha. Gonfia. Is it gonfia or where's the stress, I wonder?
On the first one, gonfia.
So can you spot the... Very good. Can you spot the English cognate then?
Let's see. I'm guessing the G was a C,
Yeah.
and then I usually like a labial consonant, and then an I reflects like an L usually. So like
Yes.
confla.
You are on
The
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 path.
one like conflagration to catch on fire. I don't know.
No, the gr
Like
would be preserved there.
Okay.
Also, velars do it too. I guess palatals or dentals don't because there's no TL sequences. Good point. So you have piano for noisy dogs, and you also have chiamo from clamare.
Mm-hmm.
But do you know the word conflate? Conflation.
Okay.
There.
What does that have to do with being swollen? So.
Root is flare, to blow. To blow together, blow up, swell. Yeah, conflation doesn't have much to do with swelling, but the root, the meaning of the metaphor is the same.
I see.
Blowing into one place. And note, by the way, the flare and blow are Grimm's Law cousins.
Oh, cool.
Perché moriamo?
Al ragazzo piacciono gli elefanti.
Spiacere. Al ragazzo piacciono gli elefanti. There's our Egyptian compound word.
Guardiamo il menù.
Guardiamo il menù.
Noi guardiamo gli animali.
Guardiamo gli animali.
Tu decidi. Seguiamo la ricetta.
Seguiamo.
Seguiamo la ricetta.
Do you know what la ricetta would be?
I don't know, some sort of rice, like risotto.
Risotto. That one has, yeah, it's weird or it's unusual, I think, for S and C to reflect the same thing. Ricetta. How's that going to be spelled? Well, you can probably see it by now.
Yeah, I see it.
Ricetta.
Recipe.
There it is. Different form. That's right. So speaking of form.
Oh, because it was the P and the T together yield geminate T.
Exactly.
This in receipt. Yep.
Das Rezept is the German derivative. And look at our form recipe. If we put on our Latin glasses, what kind of a word is that? It's a noun in English, but it's not a noun of Latin.
Oh, it's a verb, right?
What kind? Yeah, what kind of verb form?
Imperative.
Yep, it's an imperative. We've nouned it. Means take. Which is a good first word to begin a recipe with. So that goes in a nice drawer. There's other Latin verbs that have become nouns in English. What do you call someone who knows nothing? It's got a verb as its origin.
Someone who knows nothing.
Yeah, take your
I
time to
know
ponder
nothing.
it. Nothing, no.
Oh.
Io aspetto il cameriere.
Io aspetto. Look at?
Aspetto.
Wait for. Aspetto.
Oh, is this the one that had that meaning originally, but now has a very different meaning?
No, in Latin it
Is
was a
that the word
verb.
you're thinking of?
Say again?
Tu apri la bottiglia.
You're talking about nothing knower, the one in the chat?
Yes.
It was a Latin
Because it would
verb.
be nest. Let's see. Ne
Oh, the one that became
was for
nice.
nothing. Nice.
No, it's not
Yeah.
that.
See, modernly that does not have that. Okay. What are
That's
you looking
also
for?
interesting. That's a participle, though, so it's in a nearby drawer. Ne scientem,
Okay.
not knowing. That one does mean not knower. So does
Okay.
this one, though. Different root of knowing. We have scire there, but there's other no verbs. Tu apri la bottiglia.
Maybe the saber one.
Good guess. Sapere? No, not that. A different one.
Sapere,
Cognate
no.
with no. K-N-O-W, no.
La scimmia guarda il gatto.
Scimmia.
Hmm.
La scimmia.
I know the Greek version of this would
Okay.
be agnostic, but that's not what
That's
we're looking for.
that's the root, though. Actually, it's close. It exactly parallels that Greek compound.
Oh, ignorant.
That's right. Ignorant is in that same family. That's a participle. We have a verb form that we have nouned. It starts with IGN.
I guess the
Scimmia.
noun of that is what? Ignoramus?
That's the one. We don't know means a nothing knower. There's another one that's become a legal term, meaning he, she has affirmed, has sworn, that kind of a thing. And it's a perfect tense verb. Scimmia is a nice
What is the verb to affirm?
That is the question. I can just tell you. It might make it.
Okay, yes, please do.
All right. I'll tell you the root is. It's got a prefix, and the root is FID. La scimmia guarda il gatto.
Al
Yes,
gatto
I'm not
piace
sure
il
I know
cibo.
this. I don't necessarily know all the legal terms.
Affidavit.
Oh, of course. I do know this word.
It's got that nice, perfect ending on it with the w sound. And so ignoramus, affidavit. There's a few of them. Kind of a nice. Nice is nice too. Nothing knowing. By the way, what do we call a place where you will board a dog if you go out of town? Al
Kennel?
gatto piace il cibo. Say again?
Lui segue la tigre.
Kennel?
Kennel, that's right. Do you know the root of it? Lui segue la tigre.
No, I don't.
Voi
Is
aprite
it
i
from
libri.
Latin?
It is from Latin.
Oh, the K made me think otherwise.
Voi aprite I libri. Yeah, it's misleading. Kitchen is from Latin too. Don't let the spelling misle you. Think
Oh, I
about
thought kitchen was from the German Küche.
Küche and kitchen are from Latin. Coquina.
No, okay.
It's often the case that we share cognate derivatives from Latin. And it's often the case that English doesn't have it. Spiegel is from Latin, with some sound change.
Al leone piace la carne.
But anyway, let's think about kennel for a moment. I thought of a cool parallel derivative you could artificially make for a cat boarding place. Al leone piace la carne. Al leone piace la carne. Al.
Il cavallo segue la carota.
Il cavallo segue. The horse follows the carrot. Il cavallo segue la carota.
Oh, yes, and in the back you have the stick, right?
I
There's
suppose
the
so.
carrot and the stick, right? In the sentence. The
Uh,
horse follows the carrot and runs away from the stick.
got it.
I don't know the etymology of kennel. I can look it up though.
No,
If you
no need to
want.
look it up. I think if we scratch your head a little harder, you can think of it. What would be a suitable root for it to come from?
Oh, the canis, the
Yeah, it
dog,
is.
probably.
That's right. So you see umlaut happening in that. If there had been an equivalent term for a cat boarding place, I think it would have come out as kettle. Wait. Io aspetto il...
But it would be spelled EL instead of like the existing
Oh,
word kettle,
maybe.
right?
Well, you never see NLE at the end of an English word, I don't think. I think it really depends on what the consonant is. Apple, freckle,
Hmm.
kettle. So after a stop, it's LE. Meisel, my favorite. Not after fricative, I think. How about, do we have FLE?
Souffle.
But not souffle.
Yeah.
Il cameriere. Aspetta, aspetto.
Wiffle.
Wiffle, very
I think
good.
it's a brand name, but Wiffle, like wiffle ball,
Uh-huh, true.
or waffle
Oh,
too.
there's whistle, but that one does have a T in the spelling. Waffle, whiffle. There you go.
Yeah.
Whizzle. How about ZL? We have drizzle. All right. But nasals,
Trifle.
trifle. Good. Noi decidiamo. Io aspetto il cameriere. So for those watching, welcome back to Language Institute. I'm your VerbAlly. We're joined again by Levi.
Hello.
And we started just now with a bit of Italian. Anything else you'd like to look at today?
I don't know. I think we should do either Egyptian or ancient Greek or Sanskrit or one of those.
One of the ancient ones that's not on Duolingo?
One of our extra Duolingo or extra Duolingular languages.
Indeed. Sounds like a plan. Maybe, well, let's devote a bit of attention to the Sejong text.
Okay.
We mostly had it. If we sort of get our mind around the first sentence, let's look at the repeating part. Maybe skip the preface for now. We've kind of already talked about
Okay.
what that means. So let's get that open. The rest of it, there's a whole bunch of repetition and parallelism in the sentences, so we can reinforce that vocab very nicely, I think. And don't have it here, but if you got the links handy, do share.
Oh, yes.
Or just tell me the first letters in the thing. You emailed it, or you texted it to that
You
Japanese,
want.
the Japanese one, please.
Yes. Okay.
It's been a while.
It's an interesting resource. Why is this Korean phonetics book written in Japanese? That's interesting.
Well, the Japanese are keenly interested in sinology, since they have such great access to it. And it touches on that topic.
Okay.
Maybe they think of Korean as a sort of cousin language. I don't know. I mean, why are we interested in it? I don't think it's the case that all Japanese people are just fascinated by this King Sejong thing.
Okay. Good
But
point.
both Korea and Japan have strong traditions of being good China scholars.
Okay. Here we go.
In the chat here? Yeah, thank you.
Yes.
TUFS. Kyokwa. So, what do you make of the Japanese text in the greenish box versus the stuff below? What's going on there?
I think that the green box is a translation of what's in the tan box. The tan one is the original text. and the greenish yellow color is a translation into Japanese, and then the white below is some sort of commentary, would be my guess.
Well, this third one, see where I've highlighted it? We've got Toji. And I suppose
Yeah,
okay.
Toji, okay.
This
That's
is a
commentary.
This is commentary. We've actually, if you look at the order of the Hangul letters, it's the same. You've got Kiyok wa. Would this be gaon or something? Nishite in the top one. Kiyok wa gaon de kun no ji no hajime ni something suru? Hassuru maybe? On to or oto to onaji de aru.
Oh,
What do you
no,
think?
this here in the white is for each, well, for a lot of them, it is saying, oh, it's sort of explaining the. No, I was thinking it was just the readings for each of those, but I don't think that's it now. Is it explaining the syntax a little bit?
No.
Like, no.
This is a
Okay.
translation of the original Chinese text. Look, it's got jun, just like this one has jun, and it's got qiu, just like this one has qiu. Kuai, kuai. Yeah,
Then what
yeah.
is the difference between this and the
Any guesses?
pale green
Yeah.
one?
It also has the same characters. What would you guess? They are both translations. Why would there be?
Let's see. Uh, Maybe one is a translation and the other is a gloss.
Something like that. I think it'd be most accurate to say the one in green is classical Japanese, or an older form of Japanese, and the one below is modern.
Let me see.
For instance.
Okay.
Look at the final verb in these. It's always this. I don't know what the reading will be of ru here, but it ends in shi. It's not a common ending, not a common sentence ender in modern Japanese. Here we've got de aru, perfectly standard, an aru, an u form of a verb.
Okay.
So that is it. We can get a little bit of the flavor of older stages of Japanese here. Now, let's look this one up. This kanji is a simplification of the send out one. If you want to try reading the Chinese for us, though, since you did prepare that, feel free to open that up. You've got the transliteration. Let's just look at the very first one for Kiyok, the long one. I'm going to look up this particular verb here.
Kiyok ya yin ru jun zi chu fa sheng.
Good.
并书如求自出发声.
Very nice. Which one?
Is that right?
Yeah, that's very right. Which one should we look at the meaning of? Which of these characters?
Meaning. I don't know. I know a lot of them, right? Like I know "ci," for example.
Okay. My question, yeah, which ones do you not know? Which ones are new to you or need a review?
Okay, let's see. I know "fa" and "yin," "ru." Okay, I guess this fourth character, "jun."
Jun means the sovereign, the Lord. And a good compound to know for that. Let's see, how are we going to input it? It's quite nice. It is SKR. Junzi is a really important word for reading Confucius. The literal breakdown is like sovereign son, so like the prince or something, but it really means gentleman, a sort of idealized gentlemanly figure. I think you'll find translations of Confucius where it's capital G gentleman. This is it. Junzi. Okay, here the jun is not included for meaning, as you no doubt recognize. It's there to give a sound.
Oh yes.
It's in that
All of
position.
these in this spot. Yeah.
无君不出发声. How about 如? Very important one. It's in every line after this. Hereafter.
Which one?
如.
Ooh.
如. I'm going to zoom in. Here we go.
Oh, Zhu. I just know it is. Doesn't it mean if, or it's that person? 如果,
It's
right?
in
For
that
if
one. That's
or
right.
something.
如, yeah, it can mean if, but a basic meaning is verbal to approach something, including metaphorically. Approaching the situation means if. And here it means to be like. So to approach metaphorically. It approaches the sound, the initial sound of jun is the meaning. So we can say, colloquially in English, it is like the first sound of jun.
Okay, then what is this very first, this ya?
Very good. That it means a molar, the teeth in the back of the mouth.
Okay, so it says kiok, molar sound, approaches ku,
Jun.
right?
Approaches what? Hello?
Okay, then we have this rest of this. Chu fa sheng. Fa is to emit.
Good.
Sheng is the sound, right?
Yes. Voice. Voice, sound. Human voice will be a sheng, but also any noise, yeah.
So what is the chu?
Very good question. To begin, it's cutting out the garment. It's got clothes and knife.
Okay.
It's a good mnemonic. When you cut out the garment, that's the beginning of making it.
Okay. Got it.
And we have it in Japanese, hajimemashite. We're
Oh
starting
wow,
it.
okay. Yep. Got it. So this says kiok, a molar sound,
Yeah,
as we call it, velar,
velar.
in English. A
Yeah.
molar sound approaching jun, beginning sound, right? So this is a onset sound. This is like the sound at the beginning of jun,
Yep,
which
exactly.
later has palatalized, so it doesn't sound as much like it as it did.
That's exactly it.
Okay.
Junzi is, we will say, the character or the word jun. There's an implied genitive relation. 君字的出发的声音 would be modern Chinese. And they would simplify the double da phrase. It is like the sound, the beginning sound, the first emitted sound of the word jun, right?
Okay.
君字出发声. And by the way, look at these two Japanese translations. We have this three-character thing with the simplification of the sheng, right? It's just the top left component. So a long compound here, probably to be read in the Chinese way, whereas in Japanese it keeps the chu character, but it's giving the word hajime, hajime ni, in the beginning. Oh yeah, and let's find the results on, yeah, it is hasuru. You see my jisho, should be a second. Hatsu would be the basic onyomi, and here we have a nice case where it's fused with suru. Hasuru. To let out, utter, produce, emit, give forth, and so on. Kyoku wa gain de kun no ji no hajime ni hassuru oto to onaji de aru. So, decoding it backwards, onaji the same, to with the sound, which is produced at the beginning of the character of jun. Get the divergent syntax there. Let's look at sentence 2, starting with bing. Bing, by the way, do you know where this character comes from?
No.
TTC is how we write it. It's this one doubled. Li. Two Li's next to each other. We have it here. And it's just sort of contracted.
Which Li?
The standing
Okay.
one.
Oh, that one. Tatsu, I call it.
Tatsuli, we can call it, yeah.
Okay.
So just the same strokes kind of, and contracted. The bottom stroke is all one. The type of stroke changed too. Isn't that nice?
So there's two different ways. You can have them apparently disconnected,
Yep.
or you can have them sort of fused.
That's right. This is the original idea of the character, and this is just a graphic contraction. It's how it developed over time. But the idea is a stander next to a stander means stand beside. So the word means moreover, besides, and so on. 并书, and I think this is just introducing sort of like a by the way, or it also what there is more to say. Maybe this is a compound actually. 并书. It's not really about the writing, because we're talking about pronunciation. So let's see if we have an entry for 并书. No, not so much. 如求字出发声. The very same sentence structure. Like it approaches, it is like the sound which is emitted at the beginning of the word 求, which was originally voiced. I'm going to read the aspirate one, 기억.
Wait, so this 并书 means like when it's between two vowels, then, right? Or when it's not the word initial one.
Oh, maybe so. Maybe it means...
Because that's when we get the voiced allomorph, or allophone of 기억.
Tell you what, let me start playing our sutras while I go grab my Chinese dictionary. One of my Chinese dictionaries that should tell us this. It'll be a few minutes.
Okay. I'll go ahead and mute so I'm not overlapping with it in a
very good.
way that is uncomfortable for our dear listeners.
We don't want to offend precious. We'll hear the invocation too. There we go. Be right back.
येनाक्षरसमाम्नायमधिगम्य महेश्वरात् कृत्स्नं व्याकरणं प्रोक्तं तस्मै पाणिनये नमः येन धौता गिरः पुंसां विमलैः शब्दवारिभिः तमश्चाज्ञानजं भिन्नं तस्मै पाणिनये नमः वाक्यकारं वररुचिं भाष्यकारं पतञ्जलिं पाणिनिं सूत्रकारं च प्रणतोऽस्मि मुनित्रयम् ऐउण रुद्रक एवों ऐऔज हयवरट लण ञमगणनम झभय घढधश जबगडदश ख फ छ ठ थ चटतव कपय शशसर हल इति माहेश्वराणि सूत्राणि अथ प्रथमोऽध्यायः प्रथमः पादः वृद्धिरादैच अदेङ्गुणः.
Alright, not to brag or anything, but I just opened this one exactly to the right page as I was sitting down here.
Wow.
Well, for that entry, not for that particular compound. I'm going to keep looking.
इको गुणवृद्धि न धातु लोप आर्धधातुके इति च दीधीवे बीटाम् हलोऽनन्तराः संयोगः मुखनासिका वचनोऽनुनासिकः तुल्यास्य प्रयत्नं सवर्णं नाज्झलौ ईदूदेद्विवचनं प्रगृह्यम् अदसोमात् शे निपात एका जनान् ओत् सम्बुद्धौ शाकल्यस्येतावनार्षे उञः ऊ ईदूतौ च सप्तम्यर्थे दाधाघ्वदाप् आद्यन्तवदेकस्मिन् तरप्तमपौघः बहुगणवतुडति संख्या श्नान्ताषट् डति च तक्तवतो निष्ठा सर्वादीनि सर्वनामानि विभाषादिसमासे बहुव्रीहौ न बहुव्रीहौ तृतीया समासे द्वन्द्वे च विभाषाजसि प्रथमचरमतयाल्पार्धकतिपयनेमाश्च पूर्वपरापरदक्षिणोत्तरापराधराणि व्यवस्थायामसंज्ञायाम् स्वमज्ञातिधनाख्यायाम् अन्तरम् बहिर्योगोपसंज्ञानयोः स्वरादिनिपातमव्ययम् तद्धितश्चासर्वविभक्तिः.
And that would be the new sutra. We'll deal with that in a minute. Unfortunately, that dictionary, which is I think the fullest that I've got, does not have an entry for Bingshu. So we're kind of left on our own there. But we know how the allophony works. So we're not in bad shape, I think. We know a little bit of Korean, how that goes. Here we go. And we'll see Bingshu all over and over. So it's the variant sound or something. The shu is basically a verb originally to write. In modern Chinese, it means book only, not write anymore. So let's read the Kiok one whenever you're ready.
Is my audio back on?
It is.
Kiok ya yin ru kuai zi shu fa fa sheng.
Just one fa.
What?
I think you read the
Just
fa
one
twice,
fa.
or maybe.
I had a typo.
Okay.
Yes, I had a typo in my opinion.
That's a good blood type to have, typo.
Just
如快自出发生. And let's look at the Japanese here. Maybe this one has an entry. It would be a ga syllable. Ga or ge. It could be ga in or ge on, any combination there. But anyway, in Chinese it's clear.
Okay.
Ya in, whatever it is. For Japanese. Kyo wa ga in de ga on, like the kai no ji no hajime ni hassu suru oto to onaji de aru.
no, I'll tell you, the more Chinese I learn, the more my instinct is to read Japanese like Kiok wa ya yin de. Pronounce the words like
Gotcha.
in Chinese when they're a kanji, which is not how you're supposed to do it, I know, but
I suppose not.
the more Chinese I learn, the more that becomes my instinct.
When you see a German word spelled this way, German or French, do you find the same difficulty? Does it come out in the wrong sound there?
Information.
It can be a German word. It can also be a French word. In Italian, it's spelled with Z instead of a T, and it gets a final vowel.
In Spanish, it has a C.
It's true. So it's less confusing there. But German, French, English,
I do
spelled.
know. I don't find that difficulty, but I do know. I was writing something in Spanish, and I had that difficulty. I wrote it with a T, or I had been writing in Spanish, and when I switched back to English, it went with a C.
Yeah.
I got the C and the T mixed up in my handwriting
Mm-hmm.
in that same way.
Well, you know what? This next Hangul letter should probably be called Niyang, with an eng on both ends of it.
Niyang.
Don't you think?
Yeah, that's what I call it. I believe you call it teardrop.
Yeah, that's right. You did say Niyang the other day. Yeah. Let's go ahead and read that one. We know the structure of the sentence and what it means. Take it away.
Niyang ya yin ru yeah. Wait, yeah, it should brighten.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, zi, shu fa sheng.
Good. Niyang wa ga on de. Gyo is how we read this yeah, because it was nyap. Gyo no ji no hajime ni hassuru oto to onaji de aru. Doji no gakusha wa chousen go no would that be ichi onsetsu? Onsetsu? Oh, that's kind of cool. The word for syllable, umjol, in Japanese, it will sound a bit like our word onset, I think. Onsetsu. Never noticed that. See this?
Oh, that's cool.
Yeah, onsetsu. It's more than just the onsets, though. It's the whole syllables.
Here we go. Here's the name of the whole letter.
So it is. 音節を3つの部分に分け、dividing. 音節、初頭 maybe? I don't know these compounds. The readings could be all, it could be a z or a to. 初頭の字音を、let's be You have to learn compound words each on their own for Japanese because it could be one of many readings. But this one, for initial, it gives us this nice equation here. It's probably a more modern way to say this, modern term. Instead of the compound of the original, hatsukoe. Hatsukoe. So this chu can also be read as hatsu, same as the fa one, even though there's no connection. Hatsu is a kunyomi, whereas for hatsuru, hatsu is the onyomi. What a mess. 次に来る半母音 or 半母音を中声 or 中声音節末の子音の中声と遊んだ. So it gives us the names for the parts of the syllable here. Half vowel, semi-vowel, and vowel are the middle voice, middle sound. And the consonant at the end is called end sound, so coda. This would be good to study. I should do that before we look at this again. But let's continue with the Chinese. We worked our way through that velar set. Can you read the Tigut part? Let me know which words are troublesome.
Okay, so this new word, sh,
So,
what can it, this is the, I guess, dental.
that's the meaning. True. Just so, we saw the word for velar was molar sound. It's not made with the molars, but it's because of the back of the mouth that it is so called, is how I take that. Now this...
Back behind next to the molars, yeah.
The sure one is a depiction of the body part, and I'm going to find the old character forms for
the tongue.
The tongue.
It's in hua, I know.
It happens to be there. That's actually a convergence. It's etymologically not really there.
Wow, really?
Yeah. It's a contraction of a different phonetic. Here are old forms of shu. So the mouth, of course, the bottom part, and then something protruding from it, variously stylized. Oops.
Oh, it's a forked tongue.
I suppose so, yeah. It looks rather serpentine. So that's our shuin tigut, the first one. How is this one read? The YJ kanji.
Wait. Y and J.
In its sangye input. The two dots are Y, and then the crossing is a J.
Okay, interesting.
Mm-hmm.
That should be the O.
The O, exactly.
Is that right?
Like Homer Simpson.
It looks like a simplified of something.
Yeah, it does, doesn't it?
Are you sure that's not a simplified form?
I am sure. This is in the appropriate place. It does, I think, in the simplified system, it represents several other ones. Well, does it? There's a different do that does do that. Let's just find out what we can here. It'll often, it's conflated with this do series. But this is a perfectly cromulent old character. Now for Japanese, there's these guys at the bottom. These traditional shapes are simplified in these two ways here, in this nice box that sorts it all out. What were you saying?
I think there is definitely a simplified character that looks like this, though.
Well, there's to. You know what? The head one.
Oh, yes.
It does. Maybe it is kind of based on this. Here it is. It happens to be right there on my character generator. When we simplify that, it just adds another leg to that. That could be part of the motivation for simplifying it this way. It's such an odd choice. It's like nothing else, except my does that too. Anyway, back to this. 如斗字. There's so much repetition.
入斗字 出发声
Keep going. Let's just read it all in one go.
并输入单字出发声
This next letter is called tiut, I believe.
Okay. Tiut 是音如吞字字出发声 念是音如那字出发声
Na zi. And it doesn't mean that character, but the word na. This one, although may not have been na at the time, but nuo, writes a name also. ということは、Z 音で、との字の始めに発する音と同じである。This one, 比べ。What's this word? This actually might be a good way to learn what the bingshu is all about. 並べる。So, 並べて、書けば。What does 並べて mean? Arrange in a line, itemize, enumerate, equal, compare well with, be as good as. Okay, maybe that's it. Look at this nice Japanese compound. I'm highlighting it here. Narabe tateru. What's so cool about that, do you think? Why might I be so delighted?
Oh, cool. So,
It's got the double.
we have placed all three tatsu in a row.
Exactly.
The first kanji having two, and then the next one standing alone.
Exactly right. Place in a row, line up, list, enumerate, talk a lot of nonsense, tell a lot of lies. Don't mind if I do. Arrangement. So, naraberu, naraberu. Itemize, equal to, I think it's this third one that we want for the meaning. Compares well with, or something like that. Narabete kakeba, tan no ji no saisho no oto to onaji de aru. Tiut は、絶音で、トンの字の始めに発する音と同じである。Could be only here, I'm not sure. ニュンは、絶音で、な or だの字の始めに発する音と同じである。Any questions about the meaning of the whole or any of the parts?
No, in fact, any questions that I had, I probably asked in the Kyok, the molar chapter.
It's pretty much the same sentences with just a few replacements. 絶音とは現代の言語学で言うところのtongue tip sound 絶検音 maybe に当たる。These are tongue tip sounds. と国正允许 Correct rhyme style. Eastern country, correct rhyme style. Kanji on de. To tam ton na no on wa. Sorezore. Oh, cool. Oh, that's just tofu, actually. Looks like a happy smiling face here, though. Tam nang. Nang. This might be writing the zero coda here. To tam is this one. Yeah, so it's got, I think, Middle Korean spellings, and some of them it can't render because they're so out there. They're so rare. The letters are probably not available. Shall we go on to the P up, to the labials?
Yes.
Ha. Oh, look at the variant characters for the lip, by the way. You can either have the flesh radical on the bottom, or over here, they do this in Chinese now too, with the mouth on the bottom. They both write the same word, chun, for lip.
Oh, so this is a case where the simplified and the shijintai are the same.
Shinji Tai. Hello, Mackenzie, how are you?
Shinjitai.
Shinji Tai means new character form. Shinji Tai. Yes, the one with the mouth, I think, also has an old tradition as a variant in Chinese, not only simplified. But yeah, that's right. The PRC and the Shinjitai coincide here. Relaxing before bed. Thank you for thinking of us. Anything that maybe should we do some Norwegian here? Since you're here, this is probably not so engaging for you. Let us just do that. We were also doing Italian.
Yeah, specifically the thing we're looking at is a Japanese translation of a book written in Chinese about Korean.
In fact, it was where the Korean. This is the book that first spread out to the world, promulgated this new writing system for Korean. Okay, that works too. We'll do this. So we're practicing Levi's Chinese pronunciation and as well as word knowledge. It's a really formulaic text with the same sentence structure repeated. So let's hear the labial part, Levi, if you're ready.
Okay. Where should I do the whole Chun paragraph now?
Well, you can, or just stop as needed if you have any questions. Actually, this one, yeah, it's hard. Yeah. Any tips for remembering hiragana, Levi?
Not as a whole. I know I have specific tips for like specific ones.
Well, maybe I think that might be worthwhile to do that. Let us spend a few moments. So, one of my favorite ways to remember shi is to think of the fish hook. Let me show you the sound I mean. What mnemonics do you have, Levi?
Oh, can you put just a picture of all the hiragana on your screen?
I sure can. But not on this one. But here. Alright, maybe we don't need the voiced ones, just the basic voiceless, right? Will this do?
Yeah.
This is a nice handy tool if you want to pick out these characters yourself. The one I sent you, wrong place. This link here, if you type SI, it converts it to hiragana if you use lowercase. If you use capital letters, SI, it gives you the same thing in katakana. So if you ever want to write Japanese outside of Duolingo, just to look up a word, say, suppose you learned a word that was shio, and you knew it was spelled that way, but you couldn't remember what it was, you could take that, plug it in a dictionary, and find it that way. Or if you want to write a Japanese letter to your friend, something like that. It's a good tool. But anyway, let's get the whole set. Do you want hiragana to start with, Levi?
Yeah.
And note that it is
Because
read
that's
in...
what Mapenzi said they were working on.
Was it hira? Yeah, that's right. Just trying to remember those. Right. So in this one, it's printed many ways. Here we're starting at the top left and reading downward. A, I, U, E, O, with small variants. Kaki, ku, ke, ko is the second set. And so on, going rightwards. But as I say, you see it printed multiple ways. Oh, okay, good. It's different at all. Shiro is a different second one. Ni and ki, very good. It's different at all. Shio or shiro. The first is the same for these, but I had it with just o. Shio is the word for salt. S-A-L-T, salt. Table salt. Shiro means white. The color. Pronouncing it extra
The
carefully.
reason I put these two words for ni and ki is because those are kind of like a drawing of that, right?
Interesting. I never
The
thought of the knee
hiragana
before.
for knee looks like a knee, and
Also,
this one for key is like a key shape.
very good. Oh, let me keep that on screen. A, I, U. U has looks kind of like an ear, but ear doesn't really start with a U. E, O. The O does have that enclosure at the bottom. Oh, no is a good one. Looks like
Oh
no
yeah, that's
smoking.
another sort of pictographic.
Kanji Shiro that wasn't provided. Oh, there could be other Shiros. Sometimes multiple kanji can have the same reading. Let us see what else there is for Shiro. Not sorry, Shiro. White is the first one that comes to mind. Oh, this one means castle. Okay. Was it this one? That's true. There's also the one for substitution. Oh crap. I went to the wrong place. This person's got 79,000 people watching it. Good for them. I want to go to my page. How do I get there? Channel. No. Alright, getting there. Chat is open. Castle. Yeah. We're doing fantasy words. How fun. I haven't done that lesson. And Gin. So those three are the big ones. Here's another Shiro. Also read Dai. Fu. Oh, very nice. Like a mountain, kind of.
Mm-hmm.
Is that you're thinking?
Mount Fuji.
Good one, yeah. Fu for Fuji. Just so I can remember how to write kanji. Well, they work on a different logic. It's a good question. Don't get discouraged. This is a nice resource for input of characters. It takes a little bit of, there's a kind of a learning curve at the beginning, but the fun thing is you see the characters being built up, right? So you just learn these associations here for 24 basic shapes with their variants, but then as you're typing in the graphic structure of the thing rather than the sound. So we can watch, for instance, O, the person, M, gives us, actually these four are all OM. M is a straight line, basically. If we do an N below that, I suppose so. I hope it doesn't take weeks, but it takes as long as it takes. Now if I add a mouth, an R, it just inserts that there too. So this is the one I'm going for here. This one means nani, what? I'm going to backspace now and watch the components disappear one by one. The mouth is going to go away. That square shape inside, it's gone. If I take away the N, I've got these choices, and the very first component is this O. Maybe a bit abstract. It might a bit simpler would be the tree. One tree, nani. Two trees gives me hayashi. Three trees gives me mori. I enjoy the heck out of it. It's super fun to watch it built up. Crystal word. It's got three suns. There's two suns. Do different combinations. And three suns looks like that. So I really encourage playing around with this one. Just kind of get to know the lay of the land. And it gives you a predict feature. Will help you find what you're looking for. So any kanji, essentially, can be broken down here, although there are some special Japanese simplifications that you won't find. But even something as complex as the elephant here breaks down into those 25 basic elements. Let's just do a bit of Japanese, since we're talking about it so much, and maybe some more mnemonics will come to us, and meanwhile I'll leave this on the chart here.
Oh, as you just mentioned the word for elephant, it's zo, and it's the zoo is the mnemonic there.
That is good mnemonic. Zo is how you write. Z-O-U, and the sound is long O. The elephant goes in the zoo. And we're talking about Hiragana. Let's look at the more advanced so we get the whole setup.
Go.
And we are just matching pairs. Let's do an order. Ga,
Ga,
gi is like the ki, gi,
Gi.
same basic shape. Gu, ku, dakuten. That is a good question. Do you know what voicing means? We have voiceless versus voiced consonants. In Japanese, as well as in English and many other languages, you can have multiple. Okay, let's explain. You can have multiple consonants made with the same organs in making contact in the same place in the mouth. With the lip consonants, it's really easy to see. If we just sort of back to back compare what we do for p and b. If you just watch me, you can see, right, the lips are coming together. If you were just lip reading and weren't hearing what I said, you couldn't really tell these apart. You would just know I was doing one of them, or maybe even an M. But P and B are both stop sounds, inverted. The letter shapes, well, not really inverted. There's just an added feature for the B one that is not there for the P. For P.
Oh, I always like to explain voiceless and voiced using
Vo,
S and
G,
Z, buzz and
Ge.
hiss, because you can sort of feel it on your throat.
Good. And you can hold them nice and long. That's true. Basically, what we're going to talk about is Japanese has these pairs of sounds. Let me just make it real clear up front, but go ahead and demonstrate, or if you can explain a little bit, Levi. I will write the
Okay,
sets
so
there.
if you think of like if you say like hiss, like an S sound, and you put your hand on your throat,
Right,
you
your
can
Adam's
feel
apple.
your throat isn't moving. Yeah, and then you compare that with Z, you can feel there's sort of like friction or movement, kind of a buzzing
A buzz.
in your throat. That's voicing. That is your vocal folds moving in your throat as you pronounce the sound. And so that's what we call a voiced sound.
That's right.
And
It's
so
an
ones like S, where that is not occurring, are voiceless.
BRB. I think a cat wants to be let in.
So what a Dakuten will do is it will convert a voiceless sound like ki to the voiced one like gi. Right, when your vocal cords are vibrating, yes. Z, g, d, b, just like that. And compared with a voiceless, where the vocal cords are not really moving and you're just using air coming out of your lungs.
All right. Yeah, that's right. The vibrating vocal cords, vocal folds there. It's just holding together bits of skin in your throat in a certain way. And that's all there is that distinguishes g from k, z from s, and so on. For Japanese, it's these four pairs that it's really all about. So if you start with a ka, your voiceless one is basic, and the voiced one, ga, is derived by, and you mark that by adding these two little strokes. There's a third, or a second little diacritic, a second little mark for the P series, pa, pi, pu, pe, po. That's a circle. There you've got three sets of syllables being indicated there. P are also voiceless though. So if you just
So
memorize those
those
8
just have a
consonant
circle on
sounds
them
in that
for
order.
some reason, which makes sense if you know the history, but it's kind of complex. So
The P was the original value of the what is now the H set. What we write as ha at an older stage was pa. So I hope that makes it a little clearer. Right, it's a lot to keep in mind, but if you just sort of make these equations or these, remember that K and G are counterparts of each other and so on. S to Z, T to D, P to B. That's true for all of the syllables. That is unchanging.
Manga,
Manga. G is the voiced one. You see
manga,
dakuten. Also called tenten. Dot, dot. Ten is a dot. Manga means manga.
oh, is the 10 in 1010, is that Dien?
Right. That's right.
Okay, aha.
Let's see what it means. We will write that as WFYR. Actually, not anymore in Japanese. It's been simplified the same. Not Yuan. Oops, my goodness. We write it as YRF, actually, this one. Here's the simplified ten. Which hiragana are the counterparts for B? Babibubebo. Is that? I can't tell if it's a circle or a dakuten. But
It's
basically, with
Dakuten.
the H P B series is a three-parter. H P B. B is voiced. P is voiceless. Those are stops. So let's spell that out. B is a voiced. Oh, is that going through? I'll not use slashes. B is a voiced stop. Can you explain what a stop is, Levi?
A stop is a sound where instead of like ah, ba, during the P, the air is stopped. It is not coming out of your mouth. And so P, T, K, those, when they are being pronounced, you temporarily stop the airflow.
That's right.
Hence,
Airflow
stop.
is interrupted and you have a pressure buildup with a sudden release. Now, the H set, ha, that's where there's no obstruction. It's just air coming through the, what do you call it? The oral passage, the vocal, what do we call that? Your apparatus, the word escapes me.
Vocal tract.
Tract, thank you. Yeah, that's a good way to put it. The H is your basic set, ha, hi, hu, he, ho, with the change to fa when u follows. The P ones have a degree symbol like circle, papi pu pepo, babi bu bebo for the writing. They're all, let's see, how do we have them here? Ha, hi, fu, he, ho in this chart, and the modified ones are at the end of the alphabet. Babi bu bebo with dakuten. Papi pu pepo. The word for circle is maru. Manga manga. Alright. Gi is a basic ki.
Gi.
Go.
Go. Ga.
Gu.
Gu.
Ge.
Ge.
A bank is called ginko. The gi is voiced. We'll see the dakuten. Ko. Same for, yes, it is. Very good
Yes,
question.
it is.
Yeah.
That's a great question.
Same with the circle too. It's just the basic
Yeah.
characters are different, but the diacritics, the little modifiers, are exactly the same. Yeah. So you can get a wide range of sounds out of the 50 basic symbols. Close to 100 syllables each. Ginko. Did I get that? Ginko u. Manga.
Oh, you might talk a little bit about the metrical structure and how those relate to the kana.
True. Yeah, it's a good point. A good rule of thumb for Japanese is that you have a metrical grid. Are all base hiragana voices fricatives? No, not at all. The first set, the first five, a, I, U, E, O, consist of a vowel only. K, T, and P, those three are voiceless stops. Sa, Ha, those are the only voiceless fricatives. A fricative is a sound where you have friction at some point in the vocal tract. And Japanese basically has just those two. English also, we have a true F in English. Sa, we further have sh. Sh does exist as a variant sound, felt to be a form of S. Voiceless fricatives in Japanese, we're basically looking at just sa and ha. And again, sh is a variant of sa, an incidental variant. But sh is also voiceless. When you modify the sa set, you get the z sound, as we noted above in those four pairings. And the ha derives from an old P, so it's with the H and PB. HPB are written with the same basic shapes there. So you have a metrical grid for Japanese speech, and all of the full-size kana take the same amount of time to utter. So you have kata, that's going to be 2 beats, kata, kata. you can have a long consonant, TTA, although you have to write a Q here. QTA, this gives kata. So for the one on top, kata, I can clap twice. For the one below, kata, it's 3 beats. This also takes up 1 beat of time.
銀行
Ginko, again, means bank. Ginko, u. O and u, when they're within the same meaningful part of a word, will just give a long o sound. Ginko, 4 beats, and it's 4 characters. N takes up a beat too. Perfecto. Let's just keep on going. There's much to talk about with Japanese. It's very intimidating up front to learn all these 100 different symbols, but once you recognize them, they're so distinct, and they fit the Japanese spoken language so well that you couldn't imagine any better writing system for it.
Z.
Z. So here we have basic S characters with voicing. When you modify the shi, it's not a Z sound, but we get a J. G. Ah, that's a great question.
G.
Levi, do you want to take this one? How is the long O sound different from when Japanese uses the length mark? What's going on there?
I think
za,
the
ze,
length mark is only for katakana.
Generally, you can see it with hiragana in like children's books and such, but it depends. In a nutshell, it depends what class of a word it is. Is it a recent borrowing from like English or German or some other foreign language, or is it a native Japanese word? Native Japanese, in this sense, will include the old Chinese loans. So basically, you have a division between Chinese words and native Japanese versus everything else. For Chinese and native Japanese, we will write o-u with 2 vowel kana, or ko-u, so-u, and so on. We'll use u to lengthen it. But if it's a word like, what's an English one that has an o sound? Any long vowel? Service. When they take the word service from English, they hear it as sabisu. An gets 2 beats for them. Sa, lengthen. Oh, how do I get... Here it is. Just type that. Sa-bi-su. The word table, they hear it as teburu. So te, to show that it's another beat there, just a length mark. So you use the length mark if it's not Japanese and not Chinese, basically. Teburu. And just so we're clear on it, this writes sa-a-bi-su, which means service. And the second one, teburu. Te-e-buru. Table. Good. Very good question.
kaze,
Kaze. Levi, do you know kaze?
Kaze. No, I don't.
The wind can also mean a cold.
But, oh yes, I did know this.
You might know a compound of it.
zo,
Ji again, instead of Z.
ji,
Za.
za,
Ze.
ze,
Z.
z.
Map. Levi, what's a map?
Oh,
What's the Japanese word? I don't mean explain what a map is, but... Mappu wa nihongo de dou iimasu ka? Sounds a bit like cheese. Chizu.
land kata janai de.
Land kata.
Definitely.
Chizu. Chizu.
Emoji.
Emoji. This is when we took from Japanese. E means picture. Mo, ji, letter. Picture letter.
And it's not related to the English word emoticon at all.
Yep, just they happen to look a bit alike. Wind, kaze.
地図、
Chizu. And we're putting that in Japanese. So you can either type here, you can type CHI Or, to save the keystroke, the chi really reflects T and I coming together. So you'll save yourself some time. Ti. Same thing for tsu. You can just type tu. Tsu.
And the reason you can do that is because that's where they are in the chart. Like tsu is just if you
Here
put
we
a
go.
T and a U together, that's just you pronounce it as tsu.
It has to be tsu. We can't just do tu in Japanese. There's just an automatic sound change. Same thing with t and i. It always becomes chi. Tachitsu teto. Those are basic values. Here's that consonant lengthener, the small tsu, printed below there. There you go. Oh, and the n is down here. Good to know. N is one of the basic. It ends the alphabet, the basic set. Emoji. Emoji. Do you know the kanji for moji, Levi?
I'm sure I'd recognize it if I saw it.
I think you'll be fascinated to know that it is this. Moji.
I'm sure it was here.
Oh. I'll put it in the chats.
Oh wow.
Isn't that neat?
One tsu.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And where are we? We're doing
Wow.
G. You can also type ZI to get G, because that's what it is structurally.
Oh, that's cool. Because if you type ZI, you're actually doing the Chinese spelling of that.
Indeed. Let's go on. Let's see a bit more advanced Japanese. Maybe we'll talk about some kanji here and there.
曇り、
Kumori. Now, when you get to this stage, you can kind of cheat, or you can make it real easy for yourself. You've got the ri spelled phonetically here. It's not going to be number 1 or 2. They don't have a ri. Kumori. And it means cloudy. In the kanji, sort of squeezed in there, we've got the sun on top. Here's what it looks like in full. It's a letter A. Okay, never mind that. Got to reload. A. This is
the sun and then the rain.
And the rain, which is MLVY. So these are two of the components in here. They're just squeezed in to make it real compact. And then a cloud below that.
降る、
Furu.
And the word for cloud is
Kumo. You mean the Chinese kanji for cloud?
Unfortunately. Yeah, the pronunciation of the word for cloud. Unfortunately, is not nimu, even though the kanji is written as
this shape.
nimu.
This bottom one. Which looks like two that kind of stick together. Furu. Now here it could be either furu or hiru, so they tell you.
降る、
It's this one.
曇り、
Kumori. Now, you hear the fact that kumori, easily identifiable as 3 syllables, so it's not going to be ame, it's not going to be furu. Those are just 2. You can, without even remembering what they are, you can eliminate it based on the number of syllables. So it's either 3 or 4. This one is wa-ru-i, kumori.
曇り、
Kumori. Sky. The way kanji is formed. You know some Hangul. Right. The kanji was there first. Chinese writing goes back many thousands of years. And Japanese writing and Korean writing were sort of inspired by those. You can detect great influence there in those writing systems. What the Korean system keeps, which is quite nice, is the syllable block from Chinese. A single block of writing is always going to be one syllable of the spoken language. I think this is sore, sora,
空、
sora when it's on its own. Levi?
昨日は曇りで
That's
し
the
た。
book we were looking at before.
Right.
Is the book where King Sejong invented the Hangul.
That's right. It was announcing it to the world. We don't actually see much Hangul. We don't see any syllables here. Just introducing the letters. But what was the year 14 something back in the 15th century?
It's like 1440s.
I
I
believe
know
so.
the decade.
1455
Late
is mentioned
1440s,
here.
but I don't know exactly the year.
What was going on in Europe at the time?
I've seen various years.
Columbus voyages were still 4 decades away. So about that time, this Hangul system was being developed and promulgated. 昨日は曇りでした。The sentence structure is quite interesting, but the general way the letters are sort of stacked, right? So, on this Lexi Logo site, I just think it's fantastic. I hope I never have to stop using it. It's got all of your writing system needs. Here, with this one, you can, bits and pieces, not a major focus of what I read and study. But here's a keyboard that lets you play around with Hangul. So, if you know the name of the writing system, you just type H-A-N, and then hit a space bar. It'll give you the syllable block for that. You have the H on the top left, the A vowel to the right, and N on the bottom. Gul, G-E-U-L. Hit the space, it gives you the syllable block. And of course it gives you the whole set there that you can just also click on them. Levi?
I don't know very much about history either, but I think to some extent you do learn just a very small amount of history when you are learning how
は
these
い、
different
雨が
writing
降りま
systems
す。
developed. It kind of does tell you a little bit about the history, but not like a whole lot.
It's not like being a history major or reading all you can about it. Furu is to fall.
降る、
These are distractor items. These combinations don't really occur here. Warui. Do you remember the meaning of warui, Levi?
悪い、降る、曇り、
Yes.
雨、
Warui is
天気、
it's the one that made
雨が
Waluigi
降りま
famous.
す。
It does sound more like Waluigi
And
than...
Wario.
Yeah, Wario. That's true. Waluigi, it's right there. Waluigi. That's right. It means bad, wicked,
So
evil.
maybe that was first, and
Maybe
then
so.
Wario was sort of backformed by analogy
Could have
or
been.
something.
Yeah, even though Waluigi seems so secondary, with the Warui in mind, it does fit better. He's both student and friend. Levi and I have known each other 6 years now. We were in the same... Well, we didn't start on the same grad program. We overlapped in our master's program. Somewhat. Didn't we? Let's see. I finished in well, no, maybe not. I finished mine in 2015. When did you start the master's, Levi?
Oh, let's see. It would have been 20. I want to say 2018 because I finished my BA in 2017, I think.
Finished. Okay, so we didn't quite overlap, but we were in the same program in the same place at the same time there. And he's also sat in on many classes at the language school where I teach. He's learned quite a bit of Japanese and Chinese, as well as Korean with a different teacher. Friend, yeah, come and go. Ame ga furimasu. And we're both language buffs. I consider myself a nerd for language.
That's fine, of course, with not having friends you've known for a long time. I find it when you are not seeing one another constantly and don't have sort of shared projects that you're working on. It's
悪い、
difficult to stay in contact with people. So
降る、
that's
曇
just
り、
something I've found
雨、
myself. So
天気、
I don't know if that echoes your situation, Mapenzi.
明日は曇りです。
Ashita, tomorrow. Kumori desu. It's cloudy tomorrow. Will be, yeah, that's true enough. So here, if we just consider this
明日は
any sort of structured way that makes it easier to learn. Let's see, if you learned how to pronounce kanji and what it means, would you be able to deduce how to write it from that? I'm afraid it's seldom that straightforward. You need to just memorize it, essentially. And that's really because it was created for the Chinese language, perfectly suited to Chinese. Japanese language is very different in structure. Just the structure of its words, because Japanese has lots of suffixes. Chinese has essentially none, or it hasn't for many, many centuries. Maybe it had them at an earlier stage.
It's got some now.
Got a few. Yeah.
But
It is really hard to learn. When I started learning Japanese, I had the advantage of having already learned Chinese, so I knew that writing system. The hard part was already taken care of. You just have to. It is still hard. If you watch the earlier part of today's stream, you'll see me stumbling through reading some of this here, because you have to memorize for each compound word that a character occurs, and you have to know how it's read. There's going to be at least 2 or 3 readings for every kanji. The good news is, though, once you've learned some Japanese and you get how it works, no other language, no other writing system will ever frighten you again. It's about the hardest. One of the reasons I really like this CJ input here, the one I showed you, is that it reinforces how you memorize, how the thing is written and structured. And you don't have to memorize, even if you're reading a word you don't know, writing a word, you can still input it with this one. Still find it that way. Still look it up. So easier than memorizing. Chinese use the same characters, almost entirely the same one. Not entirely different. There are a handful that were created specifically for Japanese, and Japanese also simplified many of the Chinese ones, but it's essentially the same writing system, just like we use the same letters for French as for English. French
and
has those accent
sometimes
ones.
Chinese simplified some of their
Yep.
their hansa as well, and they simplified them differently than Japanese did.
Yeah, it is nice.
So that's always interesting to see.
They've been using Chinese characters to write Japanese for about 15 centuries, I think, give or take. And they've changed little in that time. Since World War II, it's been the major changes in both systems, with great overlap still. They used to write Korean much more with Chinese characters too. They kind of stopped doing that. Oh, let's look at ashita. So ashita is a Japanese word for tomorrow. It's not, you can hear it's 3, so ashita. So 3 beats, 3 syllables. But we write it with 2 kanji. That sort of thing doesn't happen in Chinese. In Chinese, one character is 1 syllable. How much Mandarin can Japanese natives understand and vice versa? 0. Spoken languages are
From hearing,
from hearing, right? From hearing, nothing. If you
but
write,
if you
they'll have.
read it, maybe you could understand a
That's
little
right.
more.
If a Japanese speaker who doesn't know Chinese and vice versa, if they sit down together, they could communicate by writing, very little by speaking, without having studied the other language. It's kind of like we were just talking about this word information, or this spelling rather. We have the same a word spelled the same way in both German and French. The pronunciations differ. You might not catch information, but when you write it down, an English speaker can instantly recognize that as a word that they know. Sort of similar for the kanji writing systems. Endlessly fascinating, I think. Yeah, once you start studying Chinese and Japanese, if you don't just fall in love with it, and I don't know what that's like to study it and not just be absolutely fascinated with it. You kind of have to be because it takes so much work. Anyway, ashita, with these 2 kanji, they're real simple. The second one is one of the basic ones, the sun. And the first one has a sun and a moon, and that's AB. So to get the whole word there as one thing, ABA. There you go. It's going to be, so ashita is how we read it in Japanese. These 2 together in Chinese would be ming er. You can tell no overlap there. Really similar in Spanish too? Yep. Maybe weird at first, but there's a reason for it. In Europe, a lot of our words of higher culture, of academia and science and all that stuff came from Latin. Information is a Latin compound word. And Latin was a language that everybody, all of the scholars, all the learned people wrote it for many centuries. Some people still do. There's still universities in Europe where you can write your dissertation in Latin, if that's your thing. So that underlies a lot of our vocabulary.
先月はよく雨が降りました。
Sengetsu. So let me show you briefly another way to look up characters that I quite like. You can write them by hand on this website. Let's get the Japanese one specifically.
Oh, that will only get the Chinese ones, though, won't it? It's called Q Hansu, not
No,
Q
look, it has this.
kanji.
Well,
yeah,
you
it
might
has the
think that,
Japanese
but it's
one.
got a special Japanese version. I think Latin is worth learning. I personally think I'm maybe a bad person to ask because I think all languages are worth learning, particularly natural languages. Conlangs are cool, but my thing is real languages. But if you're interested in European culture or history, absolutely. It will make everything that's irregular in Spanish, more or less, if you understand what the situation was in Latin, it's all perfectly clear. So sengetsu, let's write the first part of this sentence just by hand. Sen is this kanji. And so when you write it out on this little pad, it gives you its best guesses for what you have produced, and you just click on it, and it puts it there. Sen getsu. Getsu is the month or the moon, which looks like this. 4 strokes. There we go. Sengetsu wa.
And you just said you don't like conlangs, but you've been really enjoying looking at Esperanto.
That's true. I mean, they're not my main focus or anything. I do get a big kick out of Esperanto.
先月はよく雨が降りました。
Yoku ame ga. So ame is written with a kanji. It's that rain one again. M-L-B-Y. Ame ga furimashita. Furu is also a kanji. N-L-H-E-Q are the components here. What I like to do to input it is you get the kanji first, and then put it in our phonetic keyboard. And Mapenzi says, conlangs would be cool to learn if you learn it with a friend, like a secret language. Absolutely. I wouldn't want to learn Esperanto, too common. Wouldn't be good as a secret language. Perhaps not. And it's modeled on European languages. People can still understand pretty easily. So you might want to check out High Valyrian or Klingon. Not too widely understood. So once we've got our kanji, my next step for Duolingo, is get the phonetic ones.
先月はよく雨が降りました。
Getsu wa is spelled ha. Yoku will be written phonetically. Yoku. Straight comma in there. Ame. The ga particle. Fu. That just replaces the first syllable. We write ri, ma, shi, da. And let's double check it.
先月はよく雨が降りました。
And yoku means often. Last month, it rained often. Rain often fell. Yeah, me too. They're just more interesting and intricate, and to me more beautiful than conlangs. But they're fun too. There's a place for them.
よく雨が降ります。
When you said before, if you learn to read Japanese, you won't be intimidated by any other writing system ever.
Well,
What about hieroglyphics?
yeah, Egyptian still has a challenge. I mean, you can get the principle of Egyptian pretty easily once you know all the intricacies of Japanese. Have you ever heard of the language? Oh, what's it called? Shisha is one name. Tangut is another one. Do you know what that writing system looks like? That one will still give you nightmares. Inuktitut. Yeah, I suppose so.
Oh, the Inuktitut alphabet, though, is super easy to read.
The
Once you
Canadian
learn
one?
the hang of it. They've got the
昨日は雨が降りました。
rotation of the letters. It tells you like what vowel it has.
Oh, I wonder if Lexi Logo has it up. It rained yesterday. They've got just about everything. English, but not Inuktitut. Maybe under E? No. Okay, not universally everything. What's the other? Inuktitut, Inuit was also not there. Just like Mandarin, it is different. Yeah, it's kind of inspired by Chinese, but it doesn't have the same structure. It looks to me just like random strokes, although it has the same sort of arrangement. It was written with the same materials, though, so you have some overlap.
I look at when I see
明
it.
日は空が晴
I
れます。
think this looks like Chinese, but it has the additional property that I cannot understand it at all.
Yeah, you can study Chinese for a lifetime and have no clue about Tangut.
空
Sora, sky.
空は大きいです。
Sora wa ookii desu. Sky is big.
今日は曇りです。
Kyo. No, it's dead. It's extinct. Passed out of use a few centuries back, I think. To my knowledge, I'm not 100%. Could be little pockets of speakers still. Wikipedia is a good source for that kind of question.
Yeah, it looks exactly like Chinese, just unintelligible to me.
Extinct language from the 2010s, more and more Tangatologists classify it under the Chiangik branch. When did it die out? 1502 is the last attestation, apparently. So 5 centuries of documents. The majority of the texts were excavated in 1909 by Kozlov. Ivanov. Oh, is this? No, not the Indo-Europeanist guy. Shihama. Luo Fuchang. Oh, look at these two, the names of these two Chinese scholars of Tangut. We have Luo Fuchang and Luo Fucheng. Maybe siblings or parent and child. Yeah, it's sad. It does happen. Languages, like people, don't live forever. In fact, this century that we're in will probably see the most languages die out that we know of in history. It's because fewer and fewer languages are covering more and more domains for people. Kyou wa kumori desu. So all the more reason to study multiple languages diligently. Kumori desu. It is cloudy today.
明日は曇りです。
明日は it will be cloudy tomorrow.
Okay. So this word ashita means tomorrow?
It does indeed. Yeah, and just again to underline the difference between Japanese and Mandarin, the ashita kanji will be ming-er in Chinese. Language would die in the age of...
Oh, that's funny. It means the number 8 in Sanskrit.
Close. There'd be a situation where language exists and no one ever learns it. It has to do with whether children acquire it. So if you picture someone from, say, Mexico, who speaks a Mexican indigenous language, the pressure is for the children to learn Spanish. In school, they're going to encounter Spanish. In their daily life, in their dealings with government and people from other parts of Mexico, it's all going to be Spanish. Their home language would have a much, much smaller domain of usage. If the parents and their community are strongly linguistically minded, if that's a big part of their identity and they want to pass it on to the children, they have a chance. The children have a chance of acquiring it. But in many communities around the world, the pressure is to make money, to be economically successful, and that means learning the language of wider communication. That's my impression. That's the dominant situation for language death. We've got minority languages in Europe too. We think of Europe as broken into these country-sized language spheres, but there's even within the British Isles. You've got Welsh, Scottish Gaelic. I don't know how much Irish is used in Northern Ireland. Do you know, Levi? But all the Celtic languages are endangered now because the shift to English has been going on for centuries. Nobody learns it for 50 to 100 years. It's really quicker than that. If the generation that is now children, if they're not acquiring it, it's going to be gone really soon. You have sort of fragmentary knowledge of languages where people can understand it and maybe remember bits and pieces. But for a language really to thrive, it needs to be used across a majority of the domains of everyday life. I don't know that Irish is used much in Northern Ireland. It seems more of a Republic of Ireland thing to me, but I haven't read up on it. It classifies as a dead language, a language with no speakers. So speaking of Celtic, you have on the Isle of Man, there was a language called Manx, and there was a language called Cornish in the region of Cornwall. Children stopped learning it. Everybody shifted to English. Are there people that can speak Latin? Yes. But it's sort of, that's not really Latin isn't really a great example of a dead language because the Romance languages, Spanish, French, Italian, all those guys, those are continuations of the speech community of the Romans, just with several millennia, or a couple millennia of sound changes. They never stopped speaking Latin is the cool thing about that. So language didn't really, Latin didn't really die, whereas Manx and Cornish, children just stopped acquiring it.
There are people today who speak Manx Gaelic, though.
There's revival movements, but I don't know to what extent it can be considered a living language still. So a case that gives us hope, though, is Hebrew. Hebrew survived for centuries as just a liturgical language. It was a language of religious texts and religious services. And with the foundation of Israel, people made it the official language and taught it to children, and now it has millions of native speakers. So that is possible, but it takes very special circumstances for that to happen. An inspiration to us all. Let's look at a bit of Korean, too. As we were talking about Hangul, Korean is the most logical, the only featural alphabet that is in widespread use, where strokes of the correspond to features of the sounds. Look at this tough group I'm in this week. I'm at the very bottom of the league with my 200 points. I've got to get 174 to oust the one above me. Modern Hebrew close enough to Old Hebrew that it counts as a revival? That's a really good question. I'm not terribly well informed. Levi, can you answer this point? I think it's
I think
the vocabulary is all continued, right?
Right, the pronunciation has changed a little. The word order is different. Modern Hebrew tends to have the verb kind of more in the
그녀는
middle,
상당히 매력이
whereas
있습니다.
Old Hebrew was more verb initial, like modern Arabic. And it was due to the dedicated work of Eleazar ben Yehuda in like the 1800s, or maybe later. I don't know exactly when he was. But I guess it would have been later than that because he was helping get a lot that started. Israel was founded in like 47 or something.
My understanding. So as far as vocabulary, I think it's pretty close to classical Hebrew. But yeah, as Levi said, the word orders are different. Grammatical structure is a little different.
There is some differences, though, in vocabulary that I have noticed. But
48.
a lot of it is still... Oh, 48, sorry. Like I said, I don't know history.
Well, 1 year off. It's pretty good. 상당히.
상당히.
Considerably. But pretty close. I think you would, if you looked at it, I think it would be much easier for a modern Hebrew user and speaker to read the classical language than it is for us to read Beowulf. Vocabulary, spelling, and even sentence structure have changed quite a bit for us in the last millennium. Hebrew is kind of leapfrogged through history. There's millennia of change that didn't happen. She is especially charming. Attractive. Israel is probably the country, the most history about, relevant to the modern day. Very young country, indeed, yeah. There's a few that have popped up in the last decade or so, but true, very young. Let's see. Let's look a little bit at this Korean sentence. Levi, can you read it aloud? And we'll maybe look at a few of the consonant shapes, consonant vowel. Note the repeated circles here in this gold word. 상당. The circle one on the bottom, or oval, is the eng sound when it's in that position.
Okay. So you want me to read this sentence? 그녀는 상당히 매력이 있습니다.
Good. The first
그녀는,
word, right, it looks like a single sign, but it's two. It's the consonant K or G and the vowel, that straight line below. On this one,
매력이.
You see that same right angle shape? There the K is in the syllable final position. 매력이. So it'll be either gi if it's between vowels, or k if it's elsewhere. South Sudan, yeah, it's been born in the last decade. Yeah, that's about my extent of my knowledge too.
I
Oh,
do
but here,
know that
저는 비싼 음식을
the
먹습니다.
country of Eswatini, the country Eswatini recently changed its name. Right, it was formerly known by like the anglicized Swaziland,
okay.
but now it is known by its native name, Eswatini.
I was not aware of that. So that the fact that it
In
was
southern
Swazi
Africa.
makes me think we might be dealing with palatalized T or something, but it says T here for the English word. Look, it's got a little apostrophe there. Guni. Swazi. Oh, maybe it's the German value of the Z, German Italian Z. Maybe that's how that came to be spelled with a Z. Oh, it's an island within South Africa, isn't it? No, it's not.
It's landlocked.
It's landlocked. What's it surrounded by? Is it South Africa? Yeah, not island, but a land island. Yeah, it's within South Africa.
An enclave.
Yes. I went swimming with my friend Kevin once. He said, "You're not supposed to go in the enclave, you're supposed to go in the offclave." Made up a new word, like a new country. Chonun. So here we go. The second syllable here, nun, starts and ends with N, mostly South Africa. Has a border with Mozambique? Okay, thank you. Good. Indeed it does, yeah. So Lesotho, is that this one that is completely an enclave?
Yeah, Lesotho is an enclave, yeah.
So here we
And
see
do you know the opposite of an enclave?
offclave.
Exclave.
Okay. Replace one letter, don't nasalize. Cho는 비싼. That one means expensive. 비싼 음식을 먹습니다. I eat expensive food. Schmancy.
산이 꽤 높아요.
Do we have any repeated letters here? Sunny. Eswatini changed its name from Swaziland, similar to Switzerland. Yeah, brought upon by colonization. Eswatini renamed itself for a more native name. They hated being confused with Switzerland. Also a landlocked country. Land. Hello, Calguru. Welcome. Today's learning is, I think, going swimmingly, although I did make a mistake on the very first one in this one. Funny voices. Indeed. Sunny Kwe. This word I don't know. Do you know it, Levi? The gold word here? Kwe no. How are you doing, Calguru? Probably got a... Yeah, me neither. Let's find out.
꽤
Quite pretty. So pretty in both... Oh, that sense of pretty. Nopayo. You know nopta? Korean is easier or harder to learn Japanese? Some significant differences. Great question. I find Korean a little harder. May have to do with the fact that I did live in Japan for a little over a year. Living in the country does help you learn it when you have to use it. The sound system is easier for Japanese. I did zoom the text. Is it too close? I think Korean's a little bit harder. There's great parallelism, actually, between the two languages in terms of their word order and also their word structure. But Korean is a bit more intricate, and especially the politeness marking is more complex in Korean so far. So I'd have to say if Japanese is a 7 difficulty level, Korean might be an 8, 8.5. And 10.
But Korean does have the simplicity of having a hangul instead of a bunch of kanji everywhere.
The writing system is much easier to learn, although the syllable structure is more complex. And Calgary says, order difficulty, Chinese, Korean, Japanese. Take it with a little caution, though, because it depends where you're starting from. I suppose for English speakers it'd be true. Cantonese is a 9 or 10. Well, I haven't learned much Cantonese. Can't really speak on that. I know a few words, but not really many phrases or any colloquial Cantonese. I could read it okay, I suppose. Maybe. I shouldn't promise too much. Good question. Quiet. So Nupta
I think Chinese is more easy, especially in terms of the grammar, but it's I guess it's difficult to kind of get your mouth around the tone.
Mouth and ear,
but if you know phonetics, I think that helps the pronunciation. And I think the tone is just something you kind of get used to. And you have to learn the characters anyways if you're doing Japanese.
Yeah,
So.
if you're doing them all, right. One really easy thing about Chinese is there's no inflection. The verbs never change. Nouns, they don't change. They just have one form each, and that's all. So once you get your ear and your mouth around tones, and if you can find your way in with the characters, it gets much easier from there. For like the everyday sort of Chinese. For writing classical Chinese, I can't speak knowledgeably about that. I'm a long way from mastering that. That gets quite complex. But if you want to just establish yourself in the language and be able to use it, like I say, after that first step, it's quite simple. There is a Korean dialect that has tones, I'm told, but standard Korean doesn't make use of tones the way Chinese does. Which has more borrowed words? Well, I think for Korean and Japanese it's about the same. Chinese largely gets by with its own stock of words, although more and more English ones are coming in. It's not anywhere near the scale that Japanese say has. Japanese loves to borrow words from other languages. English does too, actually. The Japanese are champions at it. They borrow so many that they make up their own new words from their borrowed words. Things like kombini and so on. Do you guys know kombini? It might not look like it, but it's from an English
I know
word.
it.
Levi, of course, knows.
그 학생은 참 착해요.
그 학생은
I know it, but I don't want to spoil it.
참 착해요. Can you translate this one for us, though, in the meantime? Levi-san?
Yeah,
Levi Shi.
and this student, Chum. Oh no, that student.
That student, good.
Wait. Yeah. Chum. There you go. Very kind.
Very kind.
Oh, konbini.
Konbini is a convenience store.
Yeah, it's the English convenience.
How about pasokon? Japanese is 25%. It could be something like that. It depends how you count. I suppose if you went through a dictionary, it might be something like that. If you were looking at actual spoken use, it might not be as high. So there's many ways to count that kind of thing. But quite a lot of English. And if you just walk around, if you know how to read katakana and look at storefronts and signs and billboards, you'll see lots of English words in a new guise. Does that say goo or good? I think it's good, but it could be goo. It looks like Pickle Rick.
Good.
Good.
싼 연필.
So for Korean and Japanese, there's also all the old Chinese loans. We saw haksang there. That's from Chinese, the word for student. Lots and lots of everyday words are Chinese borrowings. In Chinese, those are not borrowed words. They're native. San, that's a verbal adjective. 연필. 의미가 뭐예요, 리바이 씨? 산연필.
Yeonpil. Yeonpil in Japanese is enpitsu.
So
you can kind of see they actually both are the same word loaned from Chinese, but you can see how the different pronunciation systems handled this word a little differently.
I do know a little bit of Arabic, and the writing system is another one of my faves. Maybe we can do a bit of that before we call it a night. San means cheap one, cheap pencil.
이 라면은 엄청 매워요.
라면 is ramen. 이 라면은 엄청 매워요. Is that really spicy?
엄청.
Too spicy. This ramen is too spicy. A nice thing about Arabic is they also get by largely with the native stock of words, although probably more and more loan words, nothing like Japanese has. And it's good, since you're learning Swahili, it's really good to know Arabic. It's a big source of Swahili words. Close to European languages, that's a great question. Not genetically. In terms of its linguistic structure, it has lots of parallels with European. But it really does its own thing, the way it derives its verb forms, and other kinds of words from its verb roots. There's this really nice sort of interlacing that happens in Semitic languages. So mostly no, but there is some closeness.
Related. Oh.
Yeah, the question is Arabic close to European languages? There is Maltese, Maltese was a dialect of Arabic, comes from a dialect of Arabic, and it's written with Roman letters, written with the Roman alphabet. It's a Catholic country, the island of Malta in the Mediterranean. So that's where Arabic is closest to European languages. There's a lot of Arabic and Spanish, but really it's a separate family. Arabic is in the Semitic branch, and the superfamily is called Afro-Asiatic, from the two continents where it's widespread. That's a great question. Do I get confused learning so many languages? The more far apart they are, the easier I find it. The hardest is if I try to do Swedish and Norwegian in the same stream. I get hopelessly confused there. But I don't know. I've been into languages long enough that I can have each with its own sort of compartment in my brain, I guess. I don't get overly confused. But there's nice parallelism happening in various languages that I find helpful even.
제가 굉장히 피곤해요.
There's only so many ways to skin that cat. The cat of labeling everything in the world. 제가 굉장히 피곤해요. The subject inflected form here. I am. 굉장히, like so-so.
굉장히,
Extremely. I am greatly tired. The 피곤 from the verb here is from Chinese. The rest is native, I think. Greatly tired.
이 여자아이는 굉장히 똑똑합니다.
이 여자아이는
이 여자아이는 굉장히 똑똑합니다.
is especially
굉장히
clever.
똑똑합니다.
여자 is from Chinese, the rest is Korean words here.
Oh, question. Is this word 연필 and 인피츠, is that a valid word of Chinese as well?
It exists. It has kind of a weird correspondence. It is read there as qianbi. The Q with the stop initial is an unexpected one. But yeah, it's written with the same character.
저의 집은
And
훨씬
same
더
meaning,
커요.
or
Same meaning, pencil. It means lead brush as far as its components. 저의 집은, that is 훨씬.
I wonder how come it has the Q and the others.
Right, I was just looking at
Probably
that
nothing,
Wiktionary entry today. It said that the word may have been re-etymologized. Just given, it's written, so the old character has the reading yen, with the meaning of lead. It may have sort of been confused or conflated with a different Chinese word. And there's our word conflate again, which we saw at the beginning.
Oh, yeah.
집은 훨씬
by
더
더 커요 is okay. The meaning here is a little unclear. It's my house topic.
훨씬
By far, all
더
big is much bigger. My house is bigger by far.
그것은 상당히 비쌉니다.
그것은 상당히 비쌉니다. Is expensive. That thing is especially
상당히
considerably expensive. Fairly.
이 오리가 훨씬 더 느려요.
이 오리가, this duck, is slower by far.
느려요. 그녀는 참 예뻐요.
그녀는 참 예뻐요. What's that mean, Levi?
예뻐요. That girl is very pretty.
She's very pretty.
이 와인은 상당히 쌉니다.
이 와인은 상당히 쌉니다.
상당히
This wine is pretty expensive.
Oh, wow. This,
Oops, not expensive.
the first
친구의 집이
one,
참
two,
깨끗합니다.
three, four, five. The first six in this sentence all have iung in them.
That's pretty. Yeah, it's a pretty frequent letter with its two functions. 친구의 집이 참 깨끗합니다. The friend's house is very clean. Oh, come on. Unbelievable.
그녀는 상당히 매력이 있습니다.
I can unbelieve it. 상당히 매력이 있습니다.
매력이.
I'm just going to word bank this. She is considerably attractive. That's how humans speak. Sounds like Commander Data here.
그것은 상당히 비쌉니다.
그것은, that thing, is fairly 비싼. Okay, so I just thought of a mnemonic. I am always confusing sada with pisada. The one with 2 syllables costs more. The longer the word, the more costly.
이 와인은 상당히 쌉니다.
This wine is cheaply fair.
친구의 집이 참 깨끗합니다.
The friend's
친구의
house, subject, very clean. The friend's house is really clean. The clean is really house. Let's do some Arabic. Yung. Yep. Good, yeah, that's good. The initials of yu and ye, which also coincide now, being 0 in Chinese. You see the instability of the eng. By the way, did you get a chance to look at that blog post? I know it's a huge data dump. It's
Yeah,
like
I've gone
16
through,
pages.
I don't know what percentage of it that I have gone through, but I started going through it,
Okay.
and then we were streaming, and so then I stopped.
Good. You might, when you get a chance to look at it again, you might go to the very end of it. The last 3 tables I think you'll find particularly interesting. It's a sort of synopsis overview. So what I'm talking about is our Lango blog. I'm just finished a draft today, but we've got lots of other posts up on language learning topics and just sort of cross-linguistic stuff, if you guys are interested. I write about all the languages I teach: Chinese, Japanese. I've written some about French, not much about German. And I've written a few cross-linguistic ones. And Levi's written 1 or 2. 2 at least, maybe 2 or 3 now. Do you recall?
I did one on Spanish. I've
That's
done
right.
one comparing Chinese, Japanese, and Korean.
There was a graphic one that we
I
worked
may
on.
have done that one is forthcoming.
But there was an earlier one, I think, too, right?
So
bed.
I don't think so.
Okay, maybe. Levi's written a couple. So now to
I've
Arabic.
done-
As you might know, it's read and written right to left. Now, dead. Oh, and another thing to know about it is the short vowels are generally not written. So we have an ah sound, but since it's just a short one, all we're going to write is D and D.
Dead.
That's what it looks like. This is a nice case because the D just has the one form. Other consonants, though, depending on the position in the word, can change their form. But compared to Japanese writing, it's still pretty simple. You've only got, how many consonants are there? Like 25, 30-ish for Arabic?
Du.
Du.
Dead.
In short. Bed.
There's
Bed.
a lot of consonants, but a
That's
manageable amount nonetheless.
It's fewer than the 100 hiragana katakana symbols you have to master. Not as bad as that.
Ked.
Although it can be hard to tell some of them apart. Dab versus da. Hard to tell apart phonetically, not graphically. Bevez. So it starts with a B, and then fill in what it does. So we've got 3 dotted letters for this one.
Vev.
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 For the fricative. Speaking of fricatives. Ked.
Ked. Dead.
Du.
Bevez.
Jedej. So, here's a case. The first, it begins and ends with a J. Je. And that's
Jedej.
we have here. It's this wave shape if it's an initial one. And when it ends the word, we get this one that dips below the line for je. That's a bed.
Bed.
Bevez. Vev. Same consonant twice. This is du. And ked. All nonsense syllables, I believe. Ked. All right. Du,
Du.
jedej.
Bevez.
Oops.
Bevez.
Here's jedej.
Jedej. Ded.
All right, I got to potentially teach a class in the morning, so I think we'll end it there for tonight. Thank you everyone for joining and for watching, and chatting especially. It's really nice to have people interacting instead of just me doing my thing. Please come and visit us again. I will say, 안녕히 계세요.
안녕히 계세요.
See you next time.